Gardeners have long been told that compost is the foundation of a living soil. While that's true, compost takes time, sometimes months, to prepare, turn, and cure before it can be spread. But what if worms could be pulled into a garden bed almost overnight, without waiting on a pile to mature? That is exactly what happens when two simple ingredients are used together. Brassica scraps soaked in molasses water and oatmeal softened into a slurry. This pairing works faster than compost to attract thousands of earthworms, and once they arrive, they go to work building the soil from the inside out. Worms respond best to quick-rotting food and sugary moisture. Worms are not drawn to every scrap of organic matter. Dry leaves, woody chips, or stringy stalks can take weeks to soften, and worms will not gather there in large numbers. They are attracted to foods that break down fast-release microbial signals and hold enough moisture to stay soft. When molasses is added to those foods, the sugars feed microbes almost immediately, producing a flush of fermentation that worms can detect underground. What might smell sharp or even unpleasant to us is a call to dinner for earthworms. Molasses-soaked cabbage scraps act like a beacon underground. Cabbage, kale, and broccoli scraps are often considered kitchen waste, but in soil they behave like a worm magnet. You see, as brassica material breaks down, it releases these fascinating sulfur-rich compounds. Worms, with their incredible sense of detection, can pick up on these compounds from several feet away. Now, here's an interesting twist. When you soak these scraps in molasses water overnight, the effect is, well, it's multiplied. The sugar in molasses, it really works wonders. It accelerates bacterial growth on the scraps, making them softer and, quite frankly, more appealing in less time. It's a little trick that goes a long way. Now, a practical method, if you're interested, is to take about 1 pound of chopped cabbage leaves or kale stems. Soak them in a gallon of water with, say, 2 tablespoons of molasses. After 12 to 24 hours, you'll want to dig a shallow trench, about 2 to 3 inches deep. Then, spread those softened scraps along the bottom. It's a simple process that can yield great results. Cover lightly with soil and mulch to hold in moisture. Within 48 hours, worms will begin to cluster in that trench. Gardeners in heavy clay notice tunnels forming as worms break through compacted soil, while those in sandy plots find that worms linger longer because the molasses helps hold moisture. The amount matters. About 1 pound of scraps per 2 square feet is a balanced dose. Adding much more can cause anaerobic conditions, which repel worms instead of attracting them. Repeating this every 10 days creates a rhythm that steadily boosts worm activity across the entire bed. While the cabbage and molasses combination works as a strong lure, oatmeal, you see, works as a steady food supply. Worms, well, they prefer soft, moist material they can graze through, and oatmeal, my friends, delivers exactly that. Unlike flour, which can clump, or bran, which sours too quickly, oatmeal ferments at a moderate pace that worms, thrive on. To prepare it, simply mix 1 cup of dry oatmeal with a quart of water and allow it to soften for several hours. The result is a slurry that can be poured into small trenches or holes across the bed. Cover with a thin layer of soil or mulch to keep pests away and, importantly, maintain moisture. For larger beds, 2 pounds of oatmeal slurry across 10 square feet provides enough food without overloading the soil. Within days, worms will cluster in those feeding pockets, and as long as the food supply remains, they will continue breeding. Each ingredient works well alone, but when combined, the results are far stronger. molasses-soaked cabbage acts like a powerful signal that draws worms quickly, while the oatmeal slurry sustains them once they arrive. Using both together ensures that worms don't just pass through, they stay, multiply and build tunnels. A good ratio is half a pound of cabbage scraps paired with 1 cup of oatmeal slurry per square foot of soil. After burying them 2 to 3 inches deep, cover with soil and mulch, then water lightly. Within a week, worm activity is visible on the surface as small casts and tiny mounds. Over time, these casts enrich the soil with humus, while the burrowing improves aeration and water flow. You know, the temptation is often to keep adding more food once worms appear, but honestly, moderation is best. Too much wet material in one spot can create these sour pockets that, well, suffocate roots. A rhythm of feeding every 7 to 10 days works best. Each time just shift the feeding zone slightly so the worms spread evenly across the bed. Over a few months, this pattern fills the soil with channels and castings, turning what was once lifeless ground into a thriving, fertile base for crops. In a small raised bed, 2 handfuls of molasses-soaked cabbage and half a cup of oatmeal slurry in each corner creates 4 feeding zones that pull worms toward the middle. In larger in-ground plots, trenches 2 feet apart can be prepared with a pound of cabbage scraps and a quart of oatmeal slurry per trench. For containers, a thin layer of molasses-soaked leaves covered with potting soil and topped with a spoonful of oatmeal slurry works without attracting pests. Over a single growing season, these methods bring visible results: softer soil, improved root growth, and healthier crops. Worms do not just visit and leave, they establish themselves, turning waste into long-term fertility. The secret to attracting worms quickly is not complicated compost systems or expensive amendments. It is about offering the right food in the right form. By soaking cabbage in molasses water and pairing it with oatmeal slurry, gardeners create a fast-acting signal and a steady food supply that transforms soil in days. This method is inexpensive, repeatable, and powerful enough to revive even tired ground. If this guide gave you new tools for building a worm-rich garden, be sure to subscribe to Soil Doctor and share this with fellow growers. The more gardeners who use simple tricks like this, the more alive and fertile our soils will become.